2018, all the facts, figures, and trends you need to know. That sounds useful. Please welcome Jeff Ramsey. Jeff.
If we can get the first slides up. Thank you. I don't have a lot of time. I'm kind of like Scott Galloway. I'm a tall, white, balding man who goes through way too much information in the allotted time. So how many people saw my presentation at this very same conference last year? Please raise your hands. Okay, that's great. You're going to be bored. It's the same damn presentation. No, actually, I'm just kidding. I did update the cover slide to 2018. There we go. You know, you guys weren't laughing at his joke, so maybe it's time for some more coffee. There's, I think, coffee back in the back room if you don't have enough caffeine to get this joke. Now, there are 10 key digital trends that we have in our latest report. I only have 20 minutes, so I'm only going to go through 6 of them, so you're getting massively gypped. But I've added some of my own content as well. So we're going to go through 6 trends for 2018. So fasten your seatbelts and we'll start zipping through these trends one after the other. The first thing is that, I hate to say this because it's a doggy downer, but reaching and connecting with consumers is only going to get tougher. We've heard a little bit about that from others who have spoken here. The fragmentation of media, you know, media has been fragmented into a fine atomized mist at this point. And in addition to that, you have things like multitasking. Now, how many people are multitasking right now looking at a second screen? That's fine, that's cool. I am really good and down with that. Just understand that your attention of this presentation will only be 68.7% of your neighbors who's not looking at their phone. So, with that said, we have lots of statistics on multitasking, and we're actually doing other things while we're making these statistics, because that's a joke, multitasking. But we found that about 80% plus of internet users are regularly looking at a second screen while they're watching TV. Who would have thought, right? If we look at it, so what's happening is when you think they're looking at the TV screen, what's actually happening is they're looking at a screen that's much closer to them, about 7 or 8 inches away, and that's their smartphone or tablet. What's more, we've looked into the numbers, crunched the numbers from a number of different sources, and we found that 74% of the time, the content on that second screen has absolutely nothing to do with what's on the TV screen. So while you think they're watching the TV show and they're watching your commercial, what they're watching is something completely different. I don't know where this stuff comes from. It's called social media. This is what's happening while we're watching TV. And it only gets worse because the world just gets more and more fragmented as we have internet-connected devices to our fridges, to our security systems, to our cars. You know, basically just about everything we're walking around with. I've got my smartwatch. It's all connected up. And I love this number from IHS Markit that says that the average household in the US has 13 devices. What the hell is that? I've got 13 myself. I can count them, and I could go through them between work and home. I've got 13. But there's other obstacles to getting people's attentions, too. It's really tough out there, folks. There's the viewability factor, where a bunch of sources say this is about 50%. I just spoke to an expert yesterday. She says it's slightly better than that, so maybe 60% are viewable. But whatever, about half of your ads are not even viewable. Then there's the ad block lips. We all have heard about people who are blocking ads regularly. Our numbers suggest that a couple of years ago it was 1 in 5, then it went to 1 in 4. Last year it jumped to 27.5%. You can kind of see the trend. It's not as dramatic as some other trends, but it is growing up. And that's among the general population. If you look among millennials, the number is even is higher at about 41%. Basically, you take millennials and any trend and you multiply by 2 or 3x. And you get your number. Now, attentions are also being fragmented in the living room as well. This is an actual picture of our living room. Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. Hang on a second. Oh, that's better, much better. Don't you wish you could do that? Just click a switch, somebody's smiling. But you know, laughter is okay. It's really, just work with me here. So, what my point is that when I walk into the living room and the family is watching some kind of content, I have no idea where that content is coming from. And the reasons for that are twofold. One, we got a ton of hardware. We've got an Xbox 360. We have an Apple TV. We have a Roku, which I think is lost somewhere between the second and third couch, not sure where. And in addition to that, we subscribe to a number of subscription services, including Netflix and Amazon Prime. And basically what's happening is there ain't no ads. So I don't know where that content is coming from. I just know I'm very unlikely to see any advertising. So wake up, advertisers, to that. And just to put a number on it, according to the IAB, and you're going to hear from Randall Rothenberg in just a few seconds after me, 58% of digital video viewers say they are more likely to stream content. Why? To eradicate or minimize the number of commercials they're seeing. So this is a thing. TV viewing habits are shifting dramatically towards streaming. We all know that. Here's some numbers that paint the picture. This is from Hub Research, and it shows in the black the percent of people whose primary way of watching their favorite TV shows is on a digital source has gone from 31% to a majority of 52%. Cord cutters and cord nevers skew young. Let's take a look at some, I could show you a dozen or more, probably 24 charts from different sources, but among those who are in the older age group that happen to fit my age bracket, only 48% of them, as internet users, regularly use digital video services or devices, but the number shoots up to 75%, again, millennials. Once again, it's that 2 or 3x factor with millennials. And so once again, with those subscription services, they're not seeing any ads. This is the future of TV. That brings us to number 2. Investments in digital marketing and media, yes, are only going to go up, and it's still going to be a double-digit gain. In fact, what we're predicting at eMarketer is another 13% gain in digital advertising this year. So let's take a look at the bigger picture. If you look at traditional advertising, newspapers and magazines, which have bled precipitously, have seen precipitous declines, they're going to continue to shrink even smaller. TV is going to eke out about a 0.5% growth rate and hit $72 billion in 2018. But digital advertising, which already eclipsed TV last year, is going to grow to $20 billion more than TV at about $94 billion. In turn, digital is being driven by what? Mobile advertising at $70 billion, which we say it accounts for 74% or a vast majority of digital advertising. And by the way, anybody trying to keep notes or taking pictures of any of this stuff, that's fine, but you will never keep up with it. We are always happy to provide a free copy of this presentation. All we need is your business card, and we'll talk about that later. It's called a form of opt-in. So with that, mobile advertising, in turn, is being driven by 2 factors. One is social media, where Facebook is king. We'll talk more about that later, and you heard from Scott. Then there's video, and you combine that with rich media, and we're talking about another $30 billion of advertising there. Scott would argue, where's that money going? Said in somewhat more explicit terms. And the obvious answer is the 2 800-pound gorillas in the advertising space, namely Google and Facebook, which combined equate to 66% of all online advertising dollars. Nobody else gets even 5%. So everybody's talking about Snapchat. They're only at 1.3% share of advertising dollars in the US, and who knows if they'll be even around tomorrow. One thing I do want you to pay attention to is Amazon, which is at 2.5%. Yes, not just a retailer, but it's an advertising platform. We say it has 2.5%. Let's take a look at the numbers. We see continued growth there. In fact, what we've determined is last year it was the 2nd fastest growing ad platform after Snapchat, 42% growth in 2018. And it's becoming a shopping mecca when you're looking for searching. 72% of shoppers use Amazon to find products or search for products, with 56% saying they go for Amazon first. Ouch for Google, right? And think of all the massive scale they have and the data they are collecting with all of those transactions. I remember when I told my wife we had just ordered an Alexa and it was on its way, and she said, "Oh my gosh, you're bringing an Alexa into the house. It'll know everything about us." And I said, "Honey, don't you think the thousands of packages that we get from Amazon every year tell them everything they need to know about us? What more can they know?" Anyway, You might have seen our report. This was really critical, beyond the duopoly. The funny thing about this report is, as I turned the page, there was nothing there. No, seriously, there was something. There was, in fact, some really good charts. This one was my favorite. Looking at the growth in terms of digital ad revenues, and if you look at the duopoly, Facebook and Google, the growth rate for 2018 is at about 18%. What is it for everybody else? All the others, it comes out to less than 5% at 4.8%. So if you're not Google and Facebook, as Scott said before, you're not really going anywhere too fast. However, this brings us to another trend, which is really important, which is there's some trouble in paradise. The number 3 trend is that in 2018, those tech titans, the social media wonder kinds of the world of social media, will come under increasing pressure to clean up their acts. We already have seen some of the data on that. According to the U.S. digital marketers, the number 1 challenge with media buying today is media quality. We're talking about brand safety, ad fraud, viewability, all the things we were talking about before. In another one from the CMO Council, once again, 72% say they have concerns about safety and controls with their digital ad placements. And then the ANA just recently launched this. We'll hear from Bob Liodice later. Only 40% of advertisers feel quote-unquote comfortable with the level of transparency they see with their programmatic ad buying. I could show you dozens of other charts that all basically say the same thing. We are nervous about where our ads are placed. And I don't know if you read this in BuzzFeed, but this was back in September. They said that there's a reckoning coming with the big tech media companies. They say there's blood in the water, and that's because of all kinds of fake tweets, Russian-backed ads on Facebook, and then, of course, all kinds of questionable material on Google and particularly YouTube, right? But consumers are paying attention too. According to this survey, 2/3 of consumers say they respond more positively to the same ads when they find them in quote-unquote established or trusted environments as opposed to some of those environments. This is a really interesting chart which comes from HubSpot, looking at the trustworthiness of ads on Facebook, Twitter, and Google in the light of all of this activity about fake news and so on. And what do we see? About 40% say they are very untrustworthy. That does not stop people from using it like all day, but they say it's very untrustworthy. On the flip side, on the other side, only around 5% or less say it's very trustworthy, the content on those sites. And by the way, that matches up right nicely with Breitbart at 5%, so take that. Now, all I've learned in the last 20-plus years of advertising is that brands want to be in a safe environment. They don't like being in the dark, and they certainly don't like nasty little surprises where their ads pop up in questionable or unsavory environments. So you can certainly agree with this prediction that you're going to watch for more light and transparency to be shed on programmatic buying, which is about 80% of all digital ad spending today. Think premium placements. According to our latest report on the topic, programmatic buying, while it's growing rapidly, is shifting very significantly towards direct, as opposed to the Wild West of real-time bidding, and it's shifting towards private exchanges as opposed to open exchanges. And just to put another point on it, Teads survey shows that 58% of CMOs have increased their spending on digital channels that can absolutely prove that they are safe. In fact, it's the number 1 strategy for achieving brand safety. I could show you lots of other surveys, but basically, I'm going to end with the fact that there's more blood in the water for Facebook, Twitter, and other social media companies. That brings us to number 4, a topic that I'm really excited about. I told you that we have an Alexa. We've had to unplug it at our home because our 8-year-old keeps coming up with songs that are explicit and turning the volume up full, and our guests are looking at each other like, what the heck is going on here? So we've had to unplug it. But we are definitely reaching a tipping point with voice recognition and adoption. If you think about it, we've as humans with our typing have had to learn the language of computers. Now computers have learned the language of humans, and they do it at 95% accuracy. Thank you to Alexa, which broke ground there. So mobile voice-enabled assistants are poised to be the next big thing. Think of all the different gadgets there are. They're already accounting for 20 to 25% of searches. In 2018, the number of people using any kind of digital-enabled assistants, whether it's standalone devices or phones, is going to be 69 million, or 25% of US internet users. It skews heavily towards smartphones, as I said before, and also, once again, it skews towards millennials. 42% will use voice assistants, and they equate to about over half of all voice assistant users. So if you're trying to reach millennials, voice recognition is one place to do that. There are opportunities here, not only for Amazon, but also for advertisers. Among US smartphone owners who have voice-enabled technology, over half of them use them to find information on a product in which they're interested, and there's other data that suggests that they're making intending to make purchases there. So we're going to be using our phone and our other standalone voice recognition devices more and more to buy stuff. So what's driving the surge in voice-enabled assistants? There's a whole bunch of things. The basic issue is that it's easier. I don't have to go to a screen, whether it's my phone or go to a computer. I simply talk into a machine. It's also providing marketers with an opportunity to build more personalized relationships with consumers, and at scale. Increasingly, those numbers are going to go up, and it's all being enhanced by AI. And as Scott Galloway said earlier, do not miss this. As opposed to when you go to a screen, whether it's a desktop and you've got hundreds of links when I do a search for something, or I go to my mobile phone and I've got 10 links, basically it's going to provide you with one answer, right? And it's often being powered by Amazon or Google, and Amazon is forcing the answer often towards their products when they have them. What this means is that you have to look at the next challenge. Forget apps. Look at the integration of a triad of technologies where you're going to have to figure out how to integrate your brand into a semi-closed loop system. Essentially, it's going to be voice recognition where I talk into a device. It calls up my personal assistant or chatbot, whatever you want to call it, which in turn is powered by AI, and it does my bidding for me, right? The question is, if you're a new brand or you're trying to unseat an incumbent, how do you insert yourself into that conversation when it's all based on my previous preferences and so on? That is an answer that I haven't heard anybody be able to articulate as yet. That brings us to number 5, which is that artificial intelligence is going to permeate every aspect of our lives. Why? Because it can crunch and parse data from multiple sources at rapid speed, and it's going to change our world as much as the internet itself. When I talk about AI, I'm talking about machine learning, natural language processing, neural networks, all of the stuff that our brains are made up. We're figuring out how to mimic that. And if you don't think it's big, look at what Google said. Before they were talking about how mobile was mobile first. That's the big thing. No, now they're saying that it's all about AI across all their products and platforms. So artificial intelligence, just in the last year, this is according to Gartner, showing that it grew from 2017, or it's going to grow from 2017 to 2018 by a factor of 3x, and by 2021, it's going to grow another almost 5x to 28.96, which reminds me of a very famous mathematician, John von Neumann, who says, don't even bother being precise when you don't even know what you're talking about. I love that line from John von Neumann. Real quote. So what are the marketers saying about AI? They're all agog about AI. They're all falling all over themselves and saying it's going to revolutionize everything in marketing as we know it, and there's probably some truth to that. I love this global survey among 1,600 global decision makers. 60% say that AI will contribute a 39% average increase in revenue by 2020. How they came up with that 39% figure, I have no idea, but it does tell you that stuff is happening. And yet, according to Forrester, only 11% of marketers self-identify as AI experts. I think that's exaggerating things slightly, while over half fall into the categories of novice or laggard, and there's plenty of other sources that say we are woefully unprepared for this new paradigm. Artificial intelligence, though, is going to power and help personalize everything in marketing that you can think of. I don't care whether you're looking at MarTech or advertising tech, it's going to change everything and speed everything up because of course it works much faster than humans. An example of that is search, where the leading hotels group has 375 hotels across the world, and through IBM Watson powering their search, they had their search results go way up, and that improved business results. Think about attribution, which Louis Pascalis was talking about before. It's one of the scourges of marketing today. We cannot figure out how to attribute across all of the different digital and non-digital channels, but artificial intelligence will eventually allow us to extract data from all those different silos and put it together and make sense of it and pull it together. As we said in our latest report on artificial intelligence, it's all about bringing order out of chaos. And that brings us to our final point, which is number 6. Make no mistake, marketers are starting to shift their attentions from millennials, because they're getting tired of them, to Gen Z, which are kind of like going from young 20, 30-somethings to teenagers. Now listen, I'm going to paint some anecdotal pictures on this, but I have lots of data to back it up. And this report that we just did on the subject talks about the fact that millennials are just now getting to the point of having some money, so you want to pay attention to them. It's a bad time, in other words, to succumb to millennial fatigue. As Mark Dolliver said recently, the author of the report, millennials are finally now becoming a consumer market that merits the long-time fascination with them. So it's not the time to break it out. Let me make this real. I have 2 sons, actually 3, but I'm going to just talk about 2 of them. One of them is living in San Francisco. He's the millennial, age 22. He has a 6-figure salary, and he lords it over me all the time. His last trip was to Greece with his girlfriend. Compare that to my 17-year-old who lives in the basement. He is literally making babysitting money and odd job money. His last trip was to Manhattan to see a concert, which we paid for, including the transportation. So who do you want to market to? I don't know, maybe millennials? Let me just skip ahead to say that now is not the time to shift your attention to Gen Z because it's the new shiny, bright object. And the reason is that millennials are now advancing in their careers. According to some really reputable data from the US Census, their incomes are now virtually on par, coming very close to the American average. And they're actively buying big-ticket items like cars and homes. And we've got lots of data that backs this up in the report. Plus, according to lots of data we've seen, they have confidence in their financial features. 85% say that I'm able to pay for my monthly bills, right? And another high number, 2/3, say they feel in control of their financial life. If you don't believe that data, it's backed up by another Harvard survey that says 56% of millennials are very or somewhat confident in their financial prospects. That said, if you're going to reach millennials, do not ignore mobile. This is probably no big surprise, but if you look at devices on which internet users are most likely to notice or act on ads, as you can see, all 3 groups, millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers, are high on desktop, laptop. But when you look at tablets and mobile phones, it's almost at 50% for millennials. So if you're reaching millennials, use phones. It's kind of a duh factor. And don't get too carried away with advertising on Facebook. We have a number of studies. I'll just share this one little tidbit that less than 1/5 of millennials agree that advertising on social networks like Facebook and Twitter is useful to me. But we have other data that supports that. That said, I hope this has been useful to you. I want to thank you for your attention. And if you'd like a copy of this presentation, you can see me or one of my colleagues here. And if you'd like a copy of this 10 Key Digital Trends report, we'd be happy to send it to you because it has the other 4 trends that I didn't have time to cover. And with that, I want to say thank you for your time.